Hello, I'm the Amazing Atheist, and you're about to watch part one of my interview with visionary scientific thinker Howard Bloom. If you enjoy what he has to say, then you can purchase any one of his three books below. I hope you enjoy the interview. I have some written
Well,
questions. I want to.
okay, but before you get the questions, let me do some scene setting. I'll tell you what's been going on tonight, okay?
Okay. I've been reading. I read your
Uh,
Twitter just now. I know you're working on a new book called the God Problem, I believe.
yes, it's called The God Problem, The Five Heresies, or The Big Bang Tango, Quarking in the Social Cosmos, Notes Toward Post-Newtonian Science. And I've got a new one that just came out called The Genius of the Beast, A Radical Revision of Capitalism, which hopefully is the book. It's a book I designed to save Western civilization. And that sounds absolutely wacky and crazy to say, but it's absolutely true. It's what I designed it for. It's why I stuck with it through 7 years of being out in the desert with it, because nobody understands what a civilization book is in the publishing industry, and it sold out its first printing in 9.5 weeks. But what I've been doing tonight is at 7 o'clock. I mean, God knows what I did earlier today. I was writing the book. But then at 7 o'clock tonight, I had a phone meeting. God, here I am scratching myself in front of the camera. Can you believe this?
It doesn't matter. I'm not
Okay.
going to be able to use your video. It's just good.
Oh, all right. Good. Okay. So now I just scratched myself in front of your audio. Oh, well, c'est la vie. So at 7 o'clock, I had a break from book writing to have a long conversation with Tom Silverman, who is the founder of Tommy Boy Records, one of the record labels that originally brought you hip hop and rap back in 1981, and who invented the New Music Seminar back in the 1980s, and then put it to sleep in the 1990s because it seemed old, and then brought it back to life last year because it seemed new again in the light of all the new music things happening. So we had a very intense conversation about the importance of recognizing that in the music business, you are not selling pieces of plastic, you are not selling downloads, you are not even selling just songs. You're selling music, yes, but you're actually selling pieces of the human spirit. You're selling raw human passion, astonishing human passion. And only to the extent that people recognize that can they do what music was meant to do, which is give you new icons and new figures that you can grow on. So that was the conversation at 7 o'clock tonight. Then I got on with my new manager. Len Sherman and David Krebs are now managing me. David Krebs is the man who put AC/DC, Aerosmith, and Ted Nugent, not to mention the Scorpions, on the map. But he has one of these panoptic minds, one of these omnivorous intelligences. So in the 30 years I've known him, we have never sat down to talk about music. We know music. We sat down to talk about the stuff that really interests us, which is geopolitics. And his partner, Len Sherman, works with people like Richard Clark, the former presidential intelligence advisor, and a whole mess of people on that level. So we were discussing strategy and film for a while tonight, and then I had to chase down Buzz Aldrin, who was in the middle of a dinner party, because America is having a real serious vision crisis. It doesn't see where it's going. And when I say see, I do mean pictures. It has no picture of where it's going next and why it's worth getting there. And why it can, oh God, here goes this phone ringing in the background. And why it can help literally save humanity in the process of getting to where it really needs to go. I mean, if we give up on American civilization, and I think 85% of the people in America are ready to give up on it, then it's all over for a lot more people than us, because the only model that's going to be left around, the only role model, talk about rock stars as role models, so are civilizations. And the only role model that's going to be left around is the one that's competing with us very heavily to be number one, and that's the Chinese model, which is thoroughly authoritarian and doesn't allow for people like you to talk to people like me, because it doesn't allow freedom of speech, and it doesn't allow the kind of mongrel mutt culture that we're able to have in the United States, where we're able to accept people from anywhere, despite all that was indicated about us by this wretched, horrible, sinful immigration bill that was passed in Arizona this week. The fact is that we have people of all kinds in the United States who mix their minds together and in the process accomplish astonishing things. The Han culture in China is a racist culture. It's based on the idea that the Han are the most superior people in the world, and that if you don't have Han genes, I'm sorry, you're part of a minority, and minorities are not treated very well there. So with Buzz, that's what I'm working on, is giving America a vision implant. So we had two conversations tonight, two very strategic conversations, because last week, 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, Buzz said to me, Howard, have you seen my unified space vision? And though Buzz and I have been palling around like Batman and Robin for 3 years now, I had never heard of Buzz's unified space vision. So he sent it, and it was it was a PowerPoint filled with acronyms, TJRs and RJFs and stuff like that, and numbers. But it's not something that a normal human being can understand. But as soon as I looked at it, I realized, holy smokes, this is the first real vision that I've seen for at least an America future in space. So I worked with a guy named Jason Louv, and we turned this really intense and technical vision into pictures, into a 1.5-minute PowerPoint and one single vision that you could put on the cover of USA Today, and got it back to Buzz to use as a tool. Well, last week, TJ, I was in China. And the President of the United States, way back in Washington, was about to give a press conference. He was about to give a speech at a space summit in which he would announce his space policy. And the odds were very good he would not be making his space policy up, determining it, until an hour before he got in front of the microphone. So I sent an email to Buzz saying, Buzz, you have a 7-hour window of opportunity to get these visuals that we just created to the man we created them for, the President of the United States. And 2 hours later, in my hotel room in China, I got an email saying, Howard, am on Air Force One. So Buzz and I have been discussing how to take that tactical salient further to give America a vision which it needs to save itself. Then what happened? Oh my God. I can't even remember what happened after that because the night has just been riddled with these little tiny things, before I talk to you. So that's it. That's been tonight. That's the framework within which we're talking.
I can't promise that I can be even a small portion as interesting as any of that, but one thing I did want to ask you, because
you have 150,000 listeners or viewers. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Well, they're idiots. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so.
Oh, no.
But they like the abuse. It's okay.
Yeah.
I just want. I was talking to my brother about this earlier today. Actually, the whole the human need, I guess, to eventually colonize, space.
Everything.
Yeah. Well, we need to spread, but I was wondering if humanity even has the guts to do that anymore, because it seems like in order to do that, you have to somewhat devalue human life. I mean, when we, colonized America, there was, a lot of failed colonies before we finally took. And I don't know if people have the stomach for that sort of thing anymore. Like, will people actually go into space knowing that mistakes will be made? Thousands of people will probably die in the attempt to seek out this adventure?
Well, now, TJ, when you sit down and try to seduce a girl, you've just met her, right? So seduction is in the back of your mind, but not yet in the back of hers. So what do? You tell her the tales of your adventures. And what are adventures? Adventures are little episodes in which you risk death. Without adventures, we simply don't get the girls. That's the basic message of the love song of Jail for Prufrock by T.S. Eliot. I agree with you that in America has become the civilization of the civilization that tries to do everything on a risk-free basis. The civilization where 20 years ago, when a woman spilled a hot cup of McDonald's coffee in her fucking own lap with her fucking own hand in her fucking own car, she sued McDonald's! Talk about not taking personal responsibility and wanting to be pampered and cocooned for the rest of your life. Wrapped in bandages and blankets so that nothing possibly can hurt you. That is not the pioneer spirit. But the pioneer spirit is right beneath the surface of the skin, because risking death is one of the most exhilarating fucking things you can do in life. It's not just great for you, it's great on behalf of society because it tests the boundaries of the larger social organism of which you're a part, and it spreads them somewhat. It's just beneath the surface. Somebody's just got to get there and rouse it. Somebody's just got to be a great atheistic, secular evangelist. And that's what I try to be, with all my heart and soul. But I'm not in your position. I don't have 150,000 viewers. So I don't get to do it as often as I'd like. I get to do it on Coast to Coast. Let's see, if they've had me on 48 times, bless their little souls. But aside from that, I don't have the reach that you have. And like you, Any foothill I climb to the top of is only the vantage point from which I can see the next mountain beyond, and I won't be happy until I've gotten up to the top and I'm able to talk to everybody in the world and grab them by the lapels and say, "Wake up, bozo! Your future is out there!" That answer the question?
Yeah, quite admirably, actually.
Besides which, the Chinese are willing to do it, and the Russians, who knows? Russia is having its problems too, because it too is a civilization left over from the 20th century and is having a hard time getting its act together for the 21st. But China is willing to do it. India is willing to do it. The population of China is greater than the entire population of the world in 1900. Not to mention 5 times the population of the United States. It's the population of China is as big as the population of, pretty much as big as the population of Africa, Europe, and the United States combined. So if we don't want to kick ass anymore, then they'll take over and kick ass, and one of the asses they'll kick will be ours, and they will kick themselves right straight up into space, and they will open a new economy that's as phenomenally different from the economy we've ever experienced in our life as opening the New World was, because opening the New World totally changed the lives of human beings. It changed what it meant to be human. And that is the obligation that America is turning its tail on right now. And sorry, I won't accept that tail. Not on my watch. It's got to turn its nose in the right direction again.
I like how you took it from trying to get some pussy to trying to rule the cosmos.
But that's what it's all about, TJ. It's called be fruitful and multiply. God got it right, you know? So did fucking Freud.
I think Al Pacino got it right in Scarface.
Oh, really? I haven't watched that. How does he put it?
I believe it's first you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the women.
That's right.
Maybe it's not necessarily in that order, but yeah.
Well, it's pretty much a cosmic imperative. I mean, you know, much as it sounds very selfish on our part to want as much tail as we can possibly get, and I don't really think of it that way when I'm sleeping with a person, because I'm sleeping with a person, not with a tail. But the fact is, that's the way the cosmos crumbles. You know, life has been around for almost 4 billion years. That's a fourth or a third of a lifetime of this of this entire universe. That's a long time. And life's imperative has always been get out there and fuck like crazy. Be fruitful and multiply. Once upon a time, there was less than a teaspoonful of life on this planet. And the only way it was going to survive was by saturating the seas with whatever the hell it was. And that meant multiplying like crazy and competing with other groups so that you got the privilege of multiplying mad. And then life got a bright idea, which is, hey, you know, all those rocks up there above our head, it would later be called the land. Why don't we try to go there too? And it started to fructify these barren rocks, which we call continents, Pangaea and all that stuff. Well, it was a ballsy venture. I mean, it was nothing but empty space up there. It was a wasteland. Going up there was crazy. I mean, you could lose your life going up there. Talk about pioneering. This was suicide. And guess what it did? Land turned out to be a great place once enough plants and once enough creatures got up there to create an ecosystem for themselves. And space is going to be the same damn way. And once upon a time, about 125 million years ago, there was a bunch of loony dinosaurs. Now, we're going to do this very anthropomorphically, but everything that I'm going to tell you is for real in terms of what was going on genetically with these beasts. There was a bunch of loony, unconventional dinosaurs, and these loony, unconventional dinosaurs has gotten it into their heads that if they could take off from the ground and go up into that great emptiness above their heads where there was nothing, space, they could accomplish something special. And if you and I were around and we'd been the conservative dinosaurs of the day, you know, the eco dinosaurs, the green dinosaurs, we'd have said, bozo, look up above your head. What's up there? Clouds. You're going to eat clouds? Stars. You're going to eat stars? Nothing is up there. Listen to me. Nothing is up there. You're going to die. It's as simple as that. Everything good and green is down here on Earth. All your food is down here on Earth. All your shelter is down here on Earth. And Mother Earth gave you birth, and Mother Earth is taking care of you, and you have the ingratitude of wanting to take to the sky. You are nuts. Well, guess what happened to all the dinosaurs who were conservatives, TJ?
I'm assuming they're gone.
Yeah, they died 65 million years ago. And how about the dinosaurs with the loony idea of doing what creatures had done when they took to this barrenness called rock, the land? They're not only still with us, there are twice as many of them as there are of us. They're called birds. There are twice as many species of birds as there are of land-walking mammals. And that means that there are twice as many ways of making a living in the great space, the emptiness above our heads, as there are of making it walking around on the ground. And guess what? Even mammals who decided to give up on just walking the land and decided to take to the sky, even they do better. They have lifetimes twice as long as the lifetimes of comparable land animals. And so do birds. They have lifetimes that are 60% to 100% longer than ours in relative terms, in relationship to their size. You know, Alex the parrot died at something like 70 years old. And Alex the parrot is like 1/15 of your size. So that's like Alex the parrot living to the age of 1300.
I want to live to the age of 1300.
Then start flying, my boy.
I just need to buy a lot of airline tickets, I guess.
Yes, that's right. So
I did want to ask about. I want to go kind of backtrack back to what you were.
Okay.
Because I do notice that you kind of talk about a lot of things in terms of the American vantage point. And,
I'm a thorough chauvinist.
Yeah. I kind of wanted. I was just kind of curious about that. I mean, I'm not, trying to. I mean, I don't know. It's like in the Lucifer principle, you kind of talked about we're kind of a pluralistic, non-violent type of culture, and we shouldn't be overly tolerant of cultures that sort of revel in violence. And I mean, mostly talking about the Middle East and Islam there. And I was just, I don't know, I'm kind of wondering, like, how do you see the United States as being less violent than Islam?
Well, okay, this is a multifaceted. First of all, let's take a look at the honest facts, and that is Afghanistan, Iraq, Vietnam, and those are horrible. They're ghastly. Al-Qaeda has come nowhere near killing as many people as we have in Afghanistan and Iraq, simply as civilian collateral damage. So that is hideous. There's no justifying it whatsoever. On the other hand, Al-Qaeda is not alone in militant Islam, and militant Islam, as the last time I counted, which was about 6 years ago, had killed over 100,000 people in Algeria. It had killed, and usually by going in the middle of the night when people are sleeping and slitting their throats, so that entire villages didn't wake up alive the next day. It had killed close to 100,000 people in the Jammu and Kashmir debacle. A struggle that's been going on for a long time. It had killed hundreds in Nigeria, and so on and so forth. So now, what's the difference? Because again, if you mount these figures, we, with our bombs, have probably killed more than they have. But the point is that militant Islam, not all Islam, militant Islam, puts violence front and center in its religion and says the only sure ticket to paradise is by going out killing somebody else. That's why you have so many suicide bombers. That's why you have people saying that is suicide bombers in militant Islam, because they're going straight to paradise, because this world really doesn't matter, just the way this world really didn't matter in the Dark Ages among Christians. It's the afterlife that counts, and you're either going to go through a hell of tortures beyond anything you've ever imagined in your life, although the ones described in the Quran are pretty damn scary, or you're going to go to paradise, but getting to paradise is hard, and the only guaranteed ticket, and it's the only guaranteed ticket to sex, because in paradise you really do have those 76 virgins with legs whose skin is so fine that you can see, and translucent that you can see the shins of the bones of their shins beneath their skin. I don't know why that's a turn on, but it's a big thing.
And not to interrupt you here, but I've always thought it was kind of strange that 76 virgins was supposed to be enough for all of eternity. It seems like you should 76 every few years or something.
But this is what's called competitive advantage, TJ. I mean, the Christian heaven was a great invention at the time. It was probably stolen from the Persians, but it was a great invention at the time because it offered you pearl and silks and all of the signs of status. But it didn't offer you girls. Muhammad's great invention was offering you sex in paradise. Now, compared to the Christian heaven, where you got no sex whatsoever, 76 virgins was a big improvement.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that. Yeah, I'd take the 76 virgins over the harp and gown, I think.
Yes, exactly. So back to the question of violence. If violence is a heroic deed, and if violence is what gets you into heaven, then there's a hell of a bigger hook, meme hook. And that is ghastly. Now, in the 1900s, the Western culture still had a hook that enticed you into violence. It said you were a hero if you went to war. In the novels of Jane Austen, for example, and in novels like Vanity Fair, the girls all want to sleep with soldiers. And they don't want to sleep with soldiers who've done nothing but KP and peel potatoes. They want to sleep with the soldiers who've actually been out there in the middle of battles because of the adventure factor that we talked about before. Because basically the rules of nature say we will give our genes to those who survive the greatest number of really life-threatening risks. Because those guys are obviously onto something. Well, we gave up on that shit in the 20th century. We turned our backs on it. We had a conference we had our first anti-war conferences. First, we had our first anti-war ideology in 1848 when Henry David Thoreau decided that he did not like the idea of war whatsoever. This was the Mexican War was going on at the time. Henry David Thoreau thought it was a thoroughly unjust war, and he sat down and he wrote a book on civil disobedience. And that book on civil disobedience was the book that would later power people like Gandhi. It started peace movements in the United States. By the 1890s, we had meetings of the leagues opposing imperialism. Those were the leagues that defined imperialism to begin with. Of course, none of them pointed at Islam's empire, which was 5 times the size of the Roman Empire, 11 times the size of the conquest of Alexander the Great, and 7 times the size of the United States, and the biggest empire in the history of the world. That was a mistake. But nonetheless, they did begin to make us feel ashamed of some of the really rotten things we were doing. And the last war in which men dreamt of glory in girls by being heroes and surviving death by killing other people was the First World War. And ever since then, we have been turning our back on violence to the best of our ability. And when we do it, we certainly do not do it happily, because it's something our culture has learned to frown on. And one result of that is that in studies of indigenous cultures, where everybody's supposed to be so close to nature and we're supposed to follow their example because they're peaceful and harmonious and warm and all that stuff, in indigenous cultures, roughly 25% of the young men die in violent conflict. And if that kind of thing were still happening in modern culture, and in modern Western culture in particular, we'd be losing 250 million men a year. And we come nowhere near that. I mean, we lost 4,000, we've lost over roughly 4,300 people in the Iraq and Iran wars, 4,300 in each. Well, compared to any war in history, the Battle of the Somme, 200,000 lives were lost in one battle in 4 days. So this is a radical decrease in violence. Not that any violence is acceptable. It really isn't. I mean, our goal really has to be to purge this planet to the best of our ability of violence. But to do it, we've got to purge the bad guys of violence as well as the good guys. Because as long as the bad guys are violent, the good guys are going to be violent too. So, and nonetheless, the collateral damage, killing families, breaking into people's homes, knocking down their doors, shooting a guy accidentally here and there, shooting 11 guys accidentally here and there, utterly and completely contemptible and unacceptable.
Right. So how do we solve the problem?
Well, first of all, we have to not be as stupid as the anti-imperialist League in the 1890s and only identify the West as having imperialism. The West is not the only imperialist culture. China is a vast imperium. Russia has been a vast empire. Again, another land empire. And then an empire that has defied all the boundaries, that's been a land and sea empire simultaneously, is the Empire of Islam. And there's a woman named Carolyn Elkind. Carolyn Elkind is considered the greatest historian living on imperialism. She's at Harvard University. So if anybody knows imperialism, it's got to be Carolyn Elkind, right? And Carolyn Elkind went on the Charlie Rose show and said to Charlie Rose point blank, no imperial culture in the history of the world has ever been able to hold the hearts and minds of the people it conquered. Guess what that indicates? She's just as stupid as the Anti-Imperialist League in the 1890s. Because the biggest imperial empire in the history of the world has been the Islamic Empire. And its people's hearts and minds are still loyal. They're loyal in northern Nigeria, they're loyal in Algeria, they're loyal in Libya, they're loyal in Egypt, which is a conquered territory. They're loyal in the Middle East, which was a conquered territory that was all Christian. It was the heartland of Christianity. It's where all the Bible took place. And a small portion of it was Jewish when the Muslims marched in and took it over by violence. Islam is still a powerful religion in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and even in the Philippines. And this is a swath of territory that covers 13,500 fucking miles. The British may have been very happy because for a minute and a half in history they controlled a quarter of the globe, but they never came anywhere near what Islam has done, and that's an empire waiting to be revived. It's an empire who's just waiting for a spirited leader to come along and show it a way to once again be the great empire that it used to be in the past. However, it's China that's going to beat our socks off. And we can't let any of these guys do any of this shit. All of what you stand for, they're telling us, and they're telling us right to our faces on the BBC, everything you stand for is false. Pluralism, tolerance, sorry, it's all false. Well, I don't want the world to be ruled by people like that, and I don't want the world to be ruled by people like the Chinese who they snuck into my computer while I was in China last week or the week before and totally dashed its brains out. I had to reconstruct it when I got back. And part of the reason is that they have, I'm told, the most aggressive hackers in the world, and some of those hackers work on behalf of guess who? The government. So you want to live in a place like that? I mean, not me. I'm a Jewish kid whose grandparents came from Belarus, White Russia, and from Latvia. And you're God knows what. And you and I are able to talk and exchange ideas, and nobody considers there to be anything wrong with it. Sorry, this could not happen in China.